So now we'll move forward with Atharva. He's CEO at NFT Labs, and now he'll be giving a talk on Soulbound tokens. Thank you.
Hey, hi everyone. Good morning. So I'm Atharva, and I'll be talking about SBT's Soulbound tokens, which have very recently become popular as possibly the new evolution in NFTs. And I guess it's important to know where this whole concept has come from. It is not Vitalik who's the first one to propose it, but he's the first one to popularize it. A couple of months back in May, he released a white paper along with two others on the topic of decentralized society. And with that white paper, this SBT term was popularized and came into the attention of mainstream media. So, I guess one of the first things to know is that the entire naming convention of an SBT, Soulbound token, comes from the game World of Warcraft, where as you advance in the game, you unlock soulbound artifacts. And those artifacts are purely meant to be your medallions of achievement. And it's just a way to signal achievement and have, higher levels of performance in the game. What we have basically seen with Vitalik's proposal is that the simplest way to look at an SBT is that it's a non-transferable NFT, which can be revoked by the party which is it should be the NFT itself. There is EIP 4974. EIP basically stands for Ethereum Improvement Proposal. So under this proposal, people have kind of given some ideas on how this Soulbound token standard can evolve based on the current attributes which are typically required for an NFT. And the idea behind the Soulbound token is that if I am one person, I might want to have multiple types of Soulbound tokens attached to my identities. For example, there could be Soulbound tokens which are about my academic credentials, Soulbound tokens which are about my work credentials, Soulbound tokens to show my in-game performance and achievement, Soulbound tokens to show my crypto trading patterns, my voting preferences, my CBDC holdings, probably my passport, identity, and other documents. So the idea really in the decentralized society, which as envisioned by Vitalik, is that with Soulbound tokens, there will be multiple types of entities issuing multiple types of SBTs to multiple and single individuals on chain. And I guess this really begs the question of why we even need an SBT. The core thesis of why an SBT is required is that you already have NFTs, okay? But then think about it this way: if we take the proof of work example, say that I want to know whether you have done something, and you used an NFT to prove that you have done something. I don't actually know if you have done that thing or you purchased that NFT from someone. Of course, I can go to the chain and check, but I cannot actually prevent you from having done it in the first place. With an SBT, what is happening is that you cannot purchase the fact that the proof that you have done something from anywhere. You have to actually do the action for the NFT, for the SBT issuer to even give you the SBT in the first place. Which makes it very different from NFTs, which conventionally the way it works is that, because NFTs have largely become wealth and status signaling mechanisms, NFTs don't really indicate much anymore, apart from maybe two things: that the person who owns the NFT knows that was the NFT to purchase at some point in time, and that they had the skill to actually purchase an NFT. So they went through the process of creating a wallet, getting the NFT, acquiring it, putting it, showing it to people, and so forth. So I guess bottom line is that we need an SBT for people to be able to prove on chain that they have done X, Y, Z to be able to unlock or own that SBT. And what you see on the screen are various, benefits of having an SBT versus a conventional NFT. But there are really two key benefits which I guess matter the most and more heavy than all the other benefits put together. Maybe the first the benefit itself is decentralized key management, and the second benefit is under collateralized lending. So in DeFi, what is happening is that lending cannot under collateralized lending is not happening to the extent that it possibly could because it is extremely risky because there is no credit scoring mechanism. With an SBT, people can start tracking your wallet actions and give you some kind of a credit worthiness assessment. And that assessment will be unique to you because that SBT is based on your actions. And these are dynamic SBTs for which the metadata gets updated based on what actions you're actually taking. So if I'm paying my, say if I'm incurring XYZ expenses on my wallet, if I have any other DeFi loans or something, I'm paying them in time and all of that. Just like how a CIBIL would do it. They would track your banking activity and give you a credit score which probably changes every 45 days. SBT can do something similar. That SBT can become your identity in the world of DeFi. And when it comes to decentralized key management, this is another very interesting use case because community-based recovery of wallets and assets is something that has been tried, extremely complicated to pull off. In short, what that means is that say tomorrow I'm part of a community or part of a protocol and I lose access to all of my assets or lose access to my wallet itself. Or if I die and my nominee gets my wallet and is not able to access my assets, then what happens to those assets? In conventional mechanisms, unless you have pledged that asset to a community recovery program, you don't have a recourse. With SBTs, one of the ideas is that one SBT in theory is supposed to represent one per person. It could be multiple wallets of that one person, but the idea really with decentralized key management is that tomorrow if I have certain assets in my wallet, I can assign nominees. And in the event that a certain action has to be triggered when the nominee is supposed to receive my assets, the SPTs which the nominees hold are their proof of me having made them my nominee. And together by consensus, they can basically do a multi-signature transaction, allowing the assets in my wallet to move to whichever other wallet they need to move without me actually being in the picture. As long as I have set up the process initially using SBTs. And one of the core use cases, like I said, is in DeFi with credit scoring. But apart from this, if you look at the proof of work society ethos, people are, how in the Web 2 world, companies like Google were the first ones to remove requirements like college degrees and so forth. As long as you knew what to code, how to code, you could become eligible for a job. If you extend this case in the Web3 world, the idea is that you should have your proof of work on chain, wherein if you are, say, a Solana developer, and some DAO is looking for a developer contributor who has experience working with Solana, by having SPTs which the developer will have earned by attending hackathons, completing courses, and so forth, he can signal to the DAO that he is capable and has the requisite experience of potentially being a valuable contributor. This basically takes forward the momentum of contributors getting attached with various organizations because their experience, credentials are on chain. They are verifiable via the SSPT, and because the SPT cannot be purchased, you as a recruiter or as the DAO committee, we have faith that this person has actually done the requisite actions that it takes to acquire that NFT in the first place, or that SPT in the first place in this case. Then we come to games and sports. So recently there's a company called Sega, very famous company in the video gaming space. They have launched an SBT platform, wherein what they are doing is that they're giving gamers SBTs which have cross-game application. The idea being that, say, if I'm a gamer and there are say ABC Web3 games. If in game A I have achieved, say, level 7 on 10, technically the way that the Saga SSPT is designed, I can start from level 7 or 10 in games B and C as well. I don't have to start from zero. So the point being that a pro gamer or an elite gamer is elite across games. He's not, his achievements in games are not isolated to those particular games. That comes to the example of gaming. For the example of work credentials and verified resume, we already covered that. College degrees is a very clear use case. You go to college, earn the SBT, khatam. The college is the issuer of the SBT. And that's it. It's a non-transferable NFT, so if I have gone to IIM Ahmedabad, I have the IIM Ahmedabad SBT. There's no other way for me to get the SBT except for IIM Ahmedabad to issue it to me. And they'll issue it to me as long as I've done XYZ. Then we come to proof of personhood. This has multiple applications, but I guess one very important is in the DAO context. And I think yesterday somebody from this GSOC team was also talking about that. That with DAOs, one of the main concerns is governance. You know, back in the day when people had voting systems where you had, if you were a landowner, you could vote. Depending on the plot size of land, you were entitled to X number of votes and so forth. But then we moved to a proper democracy where it's one person, one vote. But in a DAO, it's very difficult to enforce this one person, one vote mechanism because a lot of DAO governance proposals, the way that the staking behind them works is that the more tokens you stake, the more weightage the proposal gets, and the likelier it is to get passed, which means that the people who are the DAO founders or the core committee has uneven or unfair power on taking forward the direction. If you want to really democratize DAO voting, the way it can happen in the future is that the DAO could issue SBTs to its members, proving one member is one person is one DAO member and they're entitled to one vote, and they will not be able to cast a vote without attaching their SBT to it to be able to process the vote transaction. Then we come to maybe like fan loyalty and all of these things. These are very simple things. Say a hotel chain like Taj, for example, wants to have a loyalty program. Now, if you take it, now the kind of customer that they would want to be a part of this program is of a particular profile. If that customer is given an NFT of this loyalty reward, any Tom, Dick and Harry can become that loyalty program holder technically by buying that NFT. It is not really that profile of person who's anymore the member, but now with an SBT, we can solve for this by getting access. If Taj is giving somebody the membership as an SBT, it is to that person only. Only Taj as the issuer has the authority to revoke that SBT if the person terminates their membership or does any other action which should cause their membership to be terminated. Because it is not an NFT, membership is non-transferable. Proof of personhood, very simple. Take the DAO example. There are companies now. For example, Binance. Take the example of Binance. Binance has announced that they're launching a thing called BAB, B-A-B, Binance Account Bound Token. It is basically an SBT where you complete your KYC and Binance issues you that SBT as your proof of personhood. There are some other interesting use cases of SBTs as well, but I guess in the context of India today, one of the interesting use cases to look at is CBDCs. With CBDC being a digital format of currency, it is going to become difficult for the Ministry of Finance, RBI, to know what kind of rupee inflows and outflows are happening. Because even if you use softwares like chain analysis and so on, it's complicated and people know how to kind of mask their activity on chain to a certain extent. With CBDCs, people who are getting CBDC wallets and so forth can be issued SBTs, and these are just ideas that these SBTs basically prove that they are Indian residents, they are tax-paying residents, and so forth. The SBT can even have updating metadata which updates each year when they file their ITR and so forth. Point being that when they make a transaction with CBDC, the government knows who's doing what. One very other interesting use case is quadratic polling for voting. Quadratic polling basically means that in addition to being able to vote a yes or no, you can give a weight to your yes or no. The yes can be a strong yes, super strong yes, weak yes, and so forth, because the cost of augmenting that vote goes up. Basically, in the quadratic formula, you just have that cost per vote squared, wherein say if the cost to vote is $1 for one vote. Now, if I want to indicate a strong preference to that vote, I want to vote 2 votes. But in the quadratic voting mechanism, that 2 votes doesn't cost it costs $2. But if you take the third case, where if I have to go to 3 votes, you go to 2 squared. You don't go to $3. And by doing this, at the cost of 10 votes, you have spent $100 because the cost per vote has to be squared, not added linearly. So it is not a arithmetic. It's not a linear progression. It's a geometric progression. By making quadratic polling possible, in the case of prediction markets, this has utility. Because if you take, say, for example, even DAO proposals or things like that, now in addition to the person being able to prove that they are actually a member of the DAO and they are a single entity doing the vote, that single entity can even indicate its preference for the vote by giving it a strong yes, strong no, and so forth. The interesting fact is, the data which is affiliated with an SBT is the current AIP proposal just mentions that the entire data can be stored on chain. The only problem with that is that some people may not be comfortable with everybody being able to see everything about their credentials at all times. So in this case, there is a way to integrate limited knowledge or zero knowledge into this, wherein the actual data of credentials can be off-chain, but the transaction hash for that verification can be on-chain. So for example, if I come back to the case of I am Ahmedabad degrees, maybe I don't want my SBT to be visible to public that, I went to the college in this year, this was my GPA, I got X number of honors and so forth. Maybe I just want to prove that yes, I went there, yes or no. If an employer does a reference check on me, I can simply just, they can just check on that transaction hash yes or no. And I can just choose to reveal that to that particular potential employer, just to an extent protecting my privacy. There is another Ethereum improvement proposal in the works, which is the proposal about updatable metadata. This is not something very new or disruptive. It has been there for a couple of years now. But this proposal combined with 4974 are really going to be the foundation of SSPTs, and that is the direction that even the BAV is taking. Just some of the features which I covered earlier, their SSPTs can act as a proof of personhood with limited or zero knowledge. You can actually augment support by having quadratic polling into those voting mechanisms using SBTs. And SBTs can be further strengthened. Currently, whatever I've showed you is like very amateur level stuff, because the entire industry is new and there are a lot of more features and use cases being developed. But obviously, the sky is the limit, and we are in the early days for NFTs themselves. So you can imagine how early we are for SBTs. It's just getting started. People often ask the question that we already have a VC, verifiable credential standard in existence. So having a VC in place, what is the requirement for having an SBT? So just to kind of give some context, verifiable credential is a standard which is by W3C, which stands for World Wide Web Consortium. These guys make the standards for the internet in various applications. The core difference simply is privacy. With the VC standard, it is unilateral privacy. The issuer of the standard has complete privacy, but the person who's receiving that identification token does not have any say on who sees what data and so forth. With an SBT, because we can put the actual data off-chain and the hash of it on-chain, the person who is the recipient of the SBT has control over their privacy. And there are these 4 differences are there, but really I think this privacy is the key difference. And because of this whole ethos of Web3 being around privacy, this is the reason it will pick up. Now there is obviously risks to it. For example, you don't want Al Qaeda to give you an SBT saying you're a good terrorist. But there is but it is still very early, right? So all of these potential problems are going to arise. Then if somebody has your wallet address, they can issue an SBT to you. So now, can you hide that SBT? Can you force somebody to revoke it? Who's going to do that? All of these questions linger. I don't have the answers, but just things to think about. So SBTs are permanent unless they are revoked by the party which first issued them anyways. Because some SBTs might be issued that you don't want to be issued for whatever reason, there should ideally be ways that you can hide those SBTs from public view. Currently, whether the feature exists or not is a question. So if, for example, in the case of Saga, who's actually doing that SBT implementation for games, they're putting this feature. And I think going forward, as more platforms evolve, all these features will become pretty standard. I spoke very early in the presentation about community-based recovery. This is just a graphic to kind of show how it works. The idea being that by having nominees to do recovery, those nominees, by holding an SBT, can prove that they are the actual nominee and they can take the necessary actions for doing recovery of assets, keys, and so forth. The Twitter screenshot which I have is pretty self-explanatory. I don't need to walk you through it, but just take a look at it. Just a couple of use cases in the DAO context, and in the DAO context, we are seeing the fastest adoption of SBTs because governance is broken in DAOs. That is not a secret. It's like a very open thing. Everybody knows. So the urgency to fix the governance is there, and because DAOs are anyways more Web3 advanced, they become the first clear adopters of this technology. Cool. So thank you so much. I'll be posting a link to this presentation anyways on my Twitter. So if anybody wants to download it, see it, and so forth, feel free to do it from there. If you have any questions about anything, then I'm happy to answer. Yes. You can go first, sir. Yeah.
Hi.
Hi.
Can we use SBT for voting? Recently, EC means Election Commission trying to vote from home. So can we use this technology SBT for voting?
For voting?
Yeah, for voting for elections.
So basically, SBT is not required for voting. See, you can even have a Aadhaar card linked Web2 system, right, to do the voting. But if we come to that evolution as a society where we want on-chain voting to happen, then SBT is a way to do it because everybody who probably thinks their Aadhaar card can be issued an SBT, which gives them proof of personhood, and then that proof of personhood enables them to cast a vote.
Yes, and also can we integrate the PAN card also, right?
Anything can be integrated. Basically, SBT is just an NFT,
Yeah.
but it is not transferable. That's the only difference.
Second name is entity.
Sorry?
Entity.
Yeah. What about the entity?
It's pet name of SBT.
Yeah. Okay, it's an entity.
Yeah.
Cool. So I used to think it is Soul. Soul is the pet name of it.
Soulbound tokens means pet name is entity.
Okay, got it. Thanks.
Sure. Hi. So when we talk about NFTs, there is a one plus point that anyone can mint NFTs. And there is also a con point that anyone can mint NFTs. So when it comes to things like making it a scalable, soulbound tokens, when it comes to identities on chain, when it comes to civil score on chain and stuff like that, we will need some sort of centralized authority to do things. Like currently there are big NFT projects which are doing centralized, like they have a particular contract address, right? At the end, if anyone owns that particular contract address, they do it. But there's some sort of central authority to check these things. But when it comes to decentralized governments, when it comes to decentralized autonomous organizations, I don't think so. Maintaining all the contract addresses, you can mint NFTs easily. That's one of the cons where a lot of actors, a lot of celebrities are kind of not issuing their things because they are so easy to mint. But on the other hand, there are some people who are doing this. So when it comes to identities on chain or whatever, he said that Aadhaar card on chain. So do you think that governments will be required for having a central authority to keep all these things safe, or it can happen on a decentralized way?
I don't know. We have to see how things go. But if I were to if I have to give my thesis around this, the way it will work is that SBTs will not evolve much differently than NFTs. Whatever we are seeing happening in NFT world nowadays, maybe we have a 1 year lag in the context of SBTs, but the same patterns will be followed. Maybe certain types of SBTs may require a centralized authority oversight, not all types. So I think that's one thing. And then if you come to certain types of SBTs like academic credentials and so forth, over there what can happen is that you have the actual academic institution which is supposed to give you the SBT, but somebody can even give you a fake SSBT, which is when hide the ability for you as the recipient to be able to force revocation or to hide that SBT, which is like this come into picture. So, for example, in OpenSea, people airdrop people random shit all the time, right? The people who are big into the NFT world, the Gary Vees and Cosmo Melodicis and stuff, they just don't display all the NFTs which they have because they really want to display what they want to display. Even though you know that they own a bunch of junk as well, but that junk is just junk, and the way it is classified as junk is that they choose to hide it.
But like their OpenSea helps out that there's a hidden feature.
So that is the platform which is doing
so
that.
that's a central platform.
Correct.
Right?
So this might be a requirement, but I think we have to see how things go.
So like I had a proposal that we can have a standard on SBTs, like how we have semi-fungible tokens. Now there are multiple other NFTs, right? So we need some kind of centralized, some kind of like a bigger standard for SBTs in future, like I guess 2 to 3 years down the line, where even like central authorities can do those things. So that would be a better option. Like I think that's what I can.
So basically, for example, in the context of our company, right, we are also doing a couple of HBT implementations for academics and hotels. So this is the same proposal which we are doing, that you have a centralized platform to control. It is not truly decentralized yet, but the concept is starting to take seed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello.
Right.
There was one slide about drawbacks, right? I'm just curious to know if do you have any ideas for the solutions of it?
So, see, one clear quick solution to all the drawbacks is to have a centralized platform, but that has its own drawbacks as well. So, are we really trying to solve one problem by creating another is the question. And I guess there are some basics like centralized platform, ability to hide SBTs, ability to have SBTs revoked from your wallet by a certain community mechanism. Maybe these 2 to 3 things will come into play. Whether the centralized platform is a good idea or not remains to be seen, because then when you again come into centralization, it's not really truly decentralized. Yeah. So no perfect answer in that case. But right now, whenever we give a presentation on SBTs to any potential client, for example, for the drawbacks part, the answer is always, let's make a centralized platform for you to manage your SBTs.
That makes sense.
So hi. Question related to gaming one. You said cross-chain platform, cross-chain transfer of SBTs, right? So is that limited to specific genre? Let's say I am playing World of Warcraft and I'm trying to migrate to, let's say, strategic simulation game. So will I be able to use that? Because I come from a gaming background, I need that first-time user experience for me. It matters most to get the storyline of the game. I don't want to start at level 7. So will there be an option for me to start from the beginning?
Yeah, so this is what Sega is doing, right? Is that they have clustered the games into categories, and your SBT levels are not. Firstly, I gave the example in a very simplified manner, but it is not that if you are at level 7, you start at level 7. You start at maybe level 2 or 3, not 0. But in a similar genre of the game. So obviously, if I am playing Age of Empires, I cannot start at poker in some higher level. Just 2 different games altogether. So yeah, there is a differentiation. Okay, no, yeah.
One more, yeah. I was just wondering the activities that someone needs to do in order to get those SBTs. I'm assuming the issuance authority has the rights to set those activities and check everything. So, in terms of pain points, right, where things are still controlled by some off-chain authority, what do you think are the main pain points? So, for example, the IIM Ahmedabad example that you gave. So maybe that institution, they gave out an SBT to someone which shows off their degree. So, but things like what the person actually did in college and their evaluation and everything, that is still in the hands of the institution itself, right?
Yeah.
So what do you think are the main pain points where things like this happen?
So it is up to the issuing authority to basically determine whether the SBT should be given or not. Currently, as SBTs have, so basically these are NFTs, right? So whatever metadata you can attach to an NFT, you can attach to an SBT. To an extent, based on that industry's use case or that NFT's purpose, the issuing authority can choose to include certain metadata which is relevant to the people who need to know that metadata. But you are really trusting on the institution to do the right thing. If they make a mistake, obviously, because it's updatable metadata, they can do the updates and so forth. But in that time it takes to make an update, if you have some kind of a loss that you face as a result of that incorrect entry, that is something to be seen. And this happens even in the real world with civil, right? People get wrong civil scores all the time because there are unsanctioned loans and things which show up in the credit report which should not be there. Then you basically file a complaint, they do their own due diligence, make the rectification, and in that process you lose time. Same thing is going to happen over here, but ideally things should be faster. Whether they will actually be faster in practice or not remains to be seen.
So, can we assume that the most apt applications of this thing would be that is something that is verifiable and automated in nature? So, for example, if you want to, for example, conference attendances. So you have the transaction hash, and then you can make an SBT out of it, given that everything is verifiable. So can we assume that the direction in which the market will at least start growing is something that is verifiable and automated, or do you think otherwise?
So actually, conferences are like one of the biggest, the clear-cut use cases. So अब जो अभी लोग POAPs देते हैं, so instead of a POAP, people are giving SBTs. For the simple reason that non-transferable. So only the attendee has received it. But now again, I can come to this conference and I can go out and smoke my cigarettes the entire day. Right? I do not have to be here and actually absorb what is being said. But I can still possibly qualify for that SBT. So it is not a perfect solution to all these things, but it's a start.
But we'll get
starting point.
Yeah.
But the other clear-cut use case for possibly in addition to conferences is what do you call it? EdTech. So we know at least one company that we are working with, wherein think about a platform like Udemy or Coursera. They basically track the number of minutes that you have consumed content, and based on completion of content consumption, you are issued an SBT to prove that yes. And then there can be a test which they take before you qualify for the SBT and so forth. So yeah, basically proof of an action.
Yeah. So maybe even lead code solves and things like that. You could issue SBTs for things like that. For lead code solves,
Yeah, exactly.